Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, once again joined by Blake Whitlow, the author of the awesome Spawn Reading Order. You can find a link in the show notes, and you can follow along, know what we're going to read next. As I have said on previous episodes, I decided to incorporate some of the one-shots and the other series and the minis and whatnot to get a better understanding of Spawn as opposed to just doing the regular series, but we are going to keep doing just a regular series, one issue per episode, unlike the other stuff where I'll throw in multiples or do a whole series or a whole mini in one episode. We won't dive in as deep, but just to give context. And if there's anything that happens in a series or a one-shot that's referenced in the main series or talked about or heavily impacts, then obviously we'll mention that. But you won't need to read absolutely everything or follow along, but you're more than welcome to if you want. So with that being said, we're going to talk about issue 53 today in this episode. This is an interesting one. It finishes up Spawn's recent trip through hell, I guess you'd say. Second half of issue 50, issue 51, issue 52, which we've talked about previously. Now issue 53 finishes it off. So let me go ahead and share my screen, show you guys what we're looking at here. That's 54. There we go, 53. Another really cool looking Capullo cover, McFarlane on inks. You see the Brian down there. That's Brian Haberlin, the color artist. Malebolgia, obviously big and bad. Spawn's there. Wanda as well. And if you're wondering, how can Wanda be in hell? Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So pretty cool cover. Take a look at the credits inside, written by Todd McFarlane, or story by him anyways, the way it's credited. Pencils by Greg Capullo. Inks by McFarlane and Danny Miki. Copy editor and letters, as always, by Tom Orzechowski, and colors by Brian Haberlin with Dan Kemp. Now, we do get a review of 52. And it's interesting that it starts off talking about the shoelace that Cyan found and is using as kind of a necklace, if you will. That's talked about first, as well as the mysterious recovery from cancer for Terry. And then it talks about Spawn being in the 5th level of hell, and supposedly he's the returning king and savior. They thought Savage Dragon was because he showed up before. There's a fight. Savage Dragon loses. Spawn then says, hey, you can't kill him just for losing. That's poor. That's impolite, I guess you'd say. He goes, he doesn't deserve to die. And then apparently that means Spawn doesn't deserve to be their king and savior. He's an imposter as well. And so they go to crucify both of them when all of a sudden they disappear. So the fact that in the summary they mention the stuff that's happening back on Earth, to me, makes it feel like the story, and this is what I kind of felt like when I was reading it. I don't know that I mentioned it when we talked about it, but the whole idea of him being in hell, yeah, that feels kind of important. But the fact that he goes to the 5th level and he's hailed as some king and savior, returning messiah, prophet, whatever you want to call it, it seems so forced and not really that important, and more like an excuse for McFarlane and Eric Larson to have a crossover and have their characters fight each other. Because really, I think the only long-lasting consequence of it is the mark that he gets, which is an interesting aspect of the story because it very much is the Spawn logo that we see. But I don't know, otherwise, everything else that happened in that second issue, when I say second issue, like second issue of the arc while he's in hell, feels very like throwaway. I don't know. What do you think, Blake?
I don't think it's necessarily throwaway. There are references in the future to Savage Dragon being in hell with Spawn at the same time. There's not a whole lot outside of that, but I don't know. It provides a certain kind of context for the denizens of hell. You see another aspect to what life in hell is like. Um, there's more than just generic evil demons doing evil things. You can see that there's actually like a whole societal structure with these goblinoid monster creatures that has nothing to do with like this overarching idea that, oh, everything in hell is trying to like take over earth and kill people in heaven, and that just isn't there for these guys. So I don't know, it's kind of a little bit of interesting world building, whether intentional or not. It shows that there's more dimensions to what is normally written off as just generic evil one-dimensional thing. There's actually like a whole societal structure there. There's manipulative leaders that are taking advantage of their citizens, and I don't know, I enjoyed the issue quite a bit, but I can also see where you're coming from too, where the plot seemed a little forced.
Yeah.
to
Yeah, no,
get
it's a
these
good
two Titanic characters together.
yeah, it's a good point, because we've said all along as we've been covering the issues that just because you go to heaven doesn't mean you're good, just because you go to hell doesn't mean you're bad. So yeah, it's a good point to point out kind of they are in a way not so different from people that are hanging around on earth waiting for Jesus to come back, you know? So anyway, let's dive into issue 53 here. We see the three changes that Spawn has undergone while he's been in hell, and Malebolgia will reference him again later on in the issue. His face has been ripped off. He looks more demonic than ever. His heart, for what that's worth, it's just it looks like a heart in terms of, a human heart in terms of structure and size. Mm-hmm. But really it's just a pile of necroplasm made to look that way. And then the symbol, the Spawn symbol, which has been branded onto his chest. And again, these are shown. It talks about the abyss, the darkness and sin, and a lot of the traditional tropes that you would talk about in hell. And then we get a little psychedelic here on the second page with some, I don't know, overexposed art here, and I kind of get the impression this is Al Simmons being moved from that fifth level of hell to the final level where he was born. It even says he's being returned to his demonic birthplace, the place where he was cursed, the place where he died, the place where he made his deal. All these references to level 9, which is Malebolgia's domain, and you can see how large Malebolgia is, the way that Capullo depicts him here. Now, he's always been kind of large, but when we saw him in early issues, when he showed up when Violator and Spawn were fighting in the alleys, he wasn't near this big. And part of it's the perspective. He's up on that spire looking down. You see Spawn all the way at the bottom in that kind of pool of lava and whatnot. But, it's clear that Malebolgia can be whatever size he wants. This is the place where he rules. But it is interesting that they depict him as so large and powerful. So as Spawn is there looking up at Malebolgia, who shows up but yet another Spawn? And we've seen this in previous issues, that Billy Kincaid was bonded with the symbiote. He's become a Spawn, and he confronts Al Simmons. And I love the fact that Al Simmons dispatches him pretty easily. Like, Billy jumps at him, Al just cuts his head off. Like, nah, you're done, B. See you later. Was this really a test at all? It's talking about how he gets disemboweled in seconds, and Spawn has passed the test. And was that really a test? I think the next thing that happens is much more of a test. As we saw on the cover with Wanda, there is a version of Wanda that shows up, and Al is shocked. Maybe it's the tiny bikini she's wearing. But you wouldn't think he would be so shocked. You wouldn't think he would necessarily buy into this even being Wanda. I never for a split second thought it was Wanda, but maybe, like I said, he's distracted by the bikini, or the fact that he's been deprived. He's like a prisoner, somebody who's been in prison for so long. He finally sees a female body. He's like blinded by it. And he says, "Oh, how can this be?" And she says something about being so devastated over the loss of him and missing him so much that she committed suicide. And so, now he's there, or now she's there, and they can be together. And you see that grimace on Spawn's face on the bottom of the page there, where he's like, "Oh, I never meant for this to happen." It's really overwrought and kind of, again, obvious to me anyway that it's not Wanda, and you would think it would be obvious to Al Simmons as well when more Wandas show up, and all of a sudden he's got a harem of Wandas, like latching onto him, licking his gauntlets, whatnot, and kind of fighting over him in a lot of ways. And he just lets it happen. Not that dissimilar from when he first got sent to hell, and he was going to let all the Nectar kind of dog-looking creatures just eat him. But just like then, now he sort of snaps out of it when he realizes, hey, these creatures are not actually Wanda. They're actually pretty horrific. And it kind of reminds me, I mean, this is a trope we've seen in hundreds of movies, right? Where it's beautiful women and the guys are kind of blinded by the beauty, whether it's Dracula or various pirate movies with sirens or whatnot. And
Species.
then what's that?
Species, that whole franchise is just look at hot girl actually monster.
Yeah, exactly. And so once he realizes that, he says enough. Now, I will make note, I will point out that in that panel where he says enough, the panel on the bottom there, he has actually tears. He actually can cry, which, again, not a real human body. It's made out of necroplasm, but apparently Al Simmons knows enough to give himself tear ducts. He's actually crying here. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, he makes short work of these demonic doppelgangers that appear to be like Wanda, stabs them, whatever. He screams out, "I've suffered enough. If Malebolgia wants to go to war, I'll give it to him. I don't care anymore. Send your puppets, send them all. I'll be vicious. I'll be evil. This is going to end." And once again, notice that we get going kind of diagonally toward the bottom of the page there. We get the visage of his face, we get the heart, and we get the mark again. So it's pretty clear. Again, McFarlane's not being subtle here when he's showing us the changes that have happened while Spawn has been in hell. So he confronts Malebolgia, and he says, "Okay, now it's your turn. I'm going to take you out." And Malebolgia's like, "Calm down, dude. Like, you're my servant. I don't know what you think you're doing, but show me some respect, child." And Spawn's like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm taking you out." And Malebolgia's like, "All right, go ahead." He says, "Oh, I intend to." And he jumps up at him, and Malebolgia, he's at such a higher level than Spawn, that it's kind of funny. And I wonder if this is why McFarlane does it this way, because Spawn is, blathering on about, "I won't be your slave. You don't scare me, blah, blah, blah." And Malebolgia just laughs. And when he looks down at, the place where Spawn is, now Spawn is even smaller than he was before. And he's on Malebolgia's nipple of all things, right? Like, of how inconsequential are you that you're on Spawn's nipple? So we get this double page spread, or Malebolgia's nipple rather. We get this double page spread with Malebolgia spread out there like a scene from Playgirl or something. And you get, little circles zooming in, and there's Spawn just chilling on this cliff that's actually Malebolgia's nipple. And Malebolgia's saying, he notice what he calls Spawn here. He calls him a machine. Machines like you are very rare. You're built with just the right wiring. You could have been an instrument in God's elite. Instead, you pimped yourself out and you allowed others to trigger your senses, manipulate your logic. You became a hitman, basically, right? It's not about good or evil. These are concepts created by people with limited minds. Um, just like this version of hell that surrounds you. Again, he's being completely manipulated. He's not anywhere near on the same level of power of Malebolgia, but yet, in a way, you can think of it as foolish. In a way, you can think of it as heroic that he keeps fighting. So Malebolgia's like, I can appear in whatever way I want. He transforms like an insect. He's like a dog. Then he's this much more angelic looking person. He talks about the inconsequential nature of sin or evil and how they're all just, it's all a matter of perspective. They're all just different forms. So again, he's trying to educate Spawn, but at the same time, he's trying to manipulate him. And I think that Al Simmons is more wary of that now. He's probably when he first met Malebolgia, fresh off being killed, it was much easier for Malebolgia to kind of spout this philosophical stuff and kind of pull the wool over Simmons' eyes. But now he is a little more wise. And so Spawn's like, well, take my soul, do whatever you want. Just leave my wife alone. She's not a part of this. And Malebolgia reminds him what she is a part of this. And don't forget, I already have your soul. You already bargained that away. So you have nothing left to barter. And I do like that without hesitation, Al Simmons is like, well, yeah, I do. My loyalty, right? Like I'm fighting against you. I'm actively trying to resist you. You don't control me. What I have your power and I have this costume, but you still don't control me. I still, do what I want to some extent anyway. And Malebolgia's like, listen, worm, you're nothing. You only were reborn because I wanted you to. I let you come back. So you want to convince yourself that you're free, that's on you. But your emotions are mine. Jason Wynn, he manipulated you and now I'm manipulating you. So it's kind of interesting because Spawn does offer him his loyalty and Malebolgia's like, you're not free. I already control you. But in the end, he does agree to what Spawn's asking. So it's like, what's true? Is he just giving Spawn what he thinks? Just giving Al Simmons what he thinks he wants and he never was free? Or was Al Simmons closer to the truth than he realized by saying, I'm not your slave? But Malebolgia, as he's holding him, he does say, I've given you more tools. And we get a little editor's note that says, see the last 3 issues. And that's where we're shown there, the 3 images along the side, Visage of Death, Black Heart of Death, and the Mark. And so then Malebolgia returns him back to Earth, which is really interesting. Basically saying, hey, I still need you to go out there and recruit, do your evil stuff. And yeah, fine. And now I have your loyalty and your servitude. So be my executor, do my work. And I promise to leave your wife untouched, pure. But I don't know why you'd ever, believe that Malebolgia would really leave Wanda alone. So as Al Simmons returns to Earth, he also shows up in Terry's dream. And that it's at this moment that I think Terry truly 100% accepts the fact that Spawn and Al Simmons are one and the same, and Al's not dead, as he sits up in bed saying, "Al, you're alive," and that's how the issue ends. So, yeah, I think the aspect of it that's most interesting to me is, the fact that yes, Al made the deal and gave up his soul, and Malebolgia, he purports to have Spawn under his thumb, but I really don't think he does. And I don't know what kind of binding arrangement there is now that Al Simmons has said, hey, leave my wife alone, I'll give you my loyalty. I mean, it's not like he signed a contract or anything. So I wonder what kind of consequences that will have, if any.
It's kind of interesting because um what you're saying is right. Malebolgia is like, I won't touch her. I think it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, I'll throw you a bone. It's like you're asking for small chump change right now in the grand scheme of things. Malebolgia is thinking cosmic balance of good versus evil, some pretty heavy, heady stuff. And then he's got one of his soldiers who's acting out like, leave my girlfriend out of this. And it's like, yeah, she was kind of already not like a crucial part of my plan anyway. So it's like, sure, I'll give you that one thing, So I think he's just like, okay, cool. I can cut this entire thing out of my plan. It's not really going to affect anything in the grand scheme of things. And supposedly this guy's going to start actually listening to what I'm telling him to do now. So, it's, I don't think it affects Malebolgia one way or the other, whether or not Wanda is or isn't involved. She's a motivator for Al, and that's all she is to Malebolgia. So
Yeah, but it certainly seems like, I mean, Malebolgia has been this kind of shadowy figure in Spawn's life, and supposedly he has this power and this ability to control. And certainly he does have a lot of power. I don't know that we, at this point in the series, really have a good understanding of the rules of what Malebolgia is allowed to do or not do. But here's the thing. It's like, yeah, Spawn makes his own choices. Malebolgia is kind of banking on the fact that Al Simmons has the potential for evil, and allowing him to be on Earth is going to swell Malebolgia's ranks. But Malebolgia's made the threat of, hey, don't use up all your power. Once you do, you'll come back to hell for good. You'll be dead for good, and you'll become a general in my army. Well, not that Al used up all his power, but he used his power after Cagliostro warned him not to, telling him he would go to hell. And now he's gone to hell. He's journeyed through. He's been tested by Malebolgia in various ways. I don't think that Al's aware that he was being tested, but it seems like that, if you get returned to hell, in a way, is an empty threat now because Al's gone to hell and Malebolgia restored him. So what's to say that he wouldn't do it again? I mean, maybe it would be different if he had used up all his power. Maybe Malebolgia only returns him because he still has power left on his counter. But I don't know. It feels like in this interaction between Al and Malebolgia, Malebolgia comes across as not necessarily less powerful, but less in control of Al, which is what Al was saying, which is why he was offering his loyalty. But all of a sudden, the threat of, if I use my powers, I might go to hell, or I'm a slave to Malebolgia. Those things seem less like they have less consequence now. Understand what I'm getting at?
I think so, yeah. The rules are never fully stated in a concrete way. And a lot of the time what ends up happening is the rules change. More information is learned, and like you're saying here, it seems now like it's not completely within Malebolgia's control. Like if Al Simmons were completely under the thumb of Malebolgia, why would he make him in such a way that would, allow Al to be disloyal? So it seems like whatever part of Al's soul is inside of this necroplasmic body, it still has enough free will to make choices and to disobey. And for whatever reason, Malebolgia doesn't have that. He's still messing with Spawn. He's giving off the illusion that, I'm all powerful. Here's some more mind games, and then, grows to the size of Godzilla and then shrinks back down, changes his form. Like those are all mind games because we've not seen someone at that power level before in the series. So it's like, how? how is Spawn supposed to defeat someone like that? How are we going to get from where Spawn is now to, you know, hopefully one day going toe to toe with him? Because that's the hope, right? You know, you'd hope that Al would, you know, break his chains of Malebolgia, and he's made it no secret that he wants to kill Malebolgia. So it's like, what can he do? And you know, this is just the first step in a journey. Now Al has a far better understanding of, you know, who Malebolgia is, where he's coming from, some of his capabilities, and some of the head games. I mean, everything that Malebolgia does in regards to Spawn is a head game. It's always some kind of hidden information, a manipulation tactic. There's never clear answers if Malebolgia is involved, because he's such a liar. He's a
Yeah.
deceiver.
Yeah, 100%. You never know what's the truth with him. And, you know, I imagine that we'll see these. I mean, it almost seems like he manipulated events to get Al back into hell so he could give him these three things that he wanted him to have, these tools, as he calls them: the visage of death, the black heart of death, and the mark. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I sort of feel like, in terms of the visage of death, that was just Todd McFarlane going, you know, we've kind of had him looking like he's looked for a while. I think we need to make him look a little more vicious. Let's, you know, rip his face off so you can see his exposed teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the popularity of Venom rearing its head there. But overall, the art in the issue's pretty solid. Capullo gets to cut loose with Malebolgia. I mean, this is the most we've seen Malebolgia in any Spawn comic up to this point. So the backgrounds are a little light, but I won't quibble about that because he gives us so much detail in all the figure work and whatnot. So I don't necessarily mind that the backgrounds are a little light. I mean, it is hell. I don't know what you're going to draw, a bunch of spires or whatever. So I guess maybe that's part of the reason it is so detailed in the foregrounds, because he knew he didn't have to spend much time on the backgrounds. A lot of computerized coloring in the backgrounds as well. So, okay. Anything else to add about this issue before we call it good, Blake?
Yeah. One other thing. What were your thoughts on the return of Billy Kincaid?
You know, Billy Kincaid is one of those characters. He's a real cartoon character. And what I mean by that is, you know, when we talked about him in the initial episode where we covered him, again, no subtlety from Todd McFarlane whatsoever in that character. No redeeming qualities, out and outs, you know, serial killer.
Very one-dimensional.
Yeah, very one-dimensional. So I don't know if I mean, it was for a split second like, oh, Billy Kincaid, you know, nice to see him. Oh, no, wait. No, I guess not. Well, at least it's somebody I know. At least McFarlane's carrying that through. Will he continue to show up, I guess, is my question. Obviously, we don't want to spoil it. But, yeah, it was interesting to see him. It was even more satisfying to see Al just with a flick of the wrist, you know, not even break a sweat and chop his head off. Even with the power of a Hellspawn, Billy Kincaid is still a no match for Spawn. So that was nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got for this one.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to check out all our other content, either on the YouTube channel or on your favorite podcasting platform or app. Just do a search for The Comic Source and you'll find us. So thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.